Good morning, friend. I am recovering after this busy weekend of having family in town. I kind of was feeling a little bit under the weather, but now I'm ready to dive back in. I am committed to hopefully finish painting this room. It's 99% been cut in. I need to roll a couple areas for the first time. The only area I still need to cut in is above this big window here. And then I need to put a second coat of paint on the rest of these walls. So I'm just gonna try to bust this out today so that I can be officially done with the living room, the kitchen, that hall, the sunroom, and the entry. And then when we're ready to paint the other part of the house, we can deal with that, but we can kind of button up this. Our landscapers are doing a ton of work in the front in our entry area. So I'm gonna show you what they're gonna, it's really exciting. I wasn't sure if I was gonna like what is gonna happen out there, but the farther along it comes, the more excited I am about it. It's just hard for me to visualize the landscaping because it's not something I've dealt with in a 2D version and then have it see it come to life. And then today, the landscaper is going to be here in just a few minutes. We're going to go out there with Josh and we are going to start staking out where we're putting the irrigation, and we're going to start staking out where the garden beds are going to be, which is huge. And we made some pretty big changes to the actual garden. I am expanding the garden, which is kind of crazy to say, but I'm also taking a couple areas away, and we'll go over what I mean when we get out there.
Now, the original plan was to have 12 raised beds and a massive in-ground garden. Well, if you remember from the previous homestead, I had 16 raised beds, and they were 16 feet by 4 feet, which is the same size of raised beds we're building on this homestead. And then I had some in-ground gardening areas as well. But at the last homestead, one thing I really struggled with was sunlight. And so 2 of those raised beds, I really couldn't grow anything in. And another 2, I struggled to grow stuff in just because they didn't get very much sunlight. And that is not going to be a problem here. So each of my raised beds on this property are going to be more productive than my raised beds on the last property because of just the sheer amount of sunlight that I'm going to get here. Well, I was reevaluating my life choices, and just from the previous experience I have of the last 3 years, my in-ground beds were so much more work. And so I have decided to go ahead and for now, nix the in-ground bed garden area, and in the future we can reevaluate that. But we're going to expand the raised bed area. We are going to now put in 20 raised beds instead of the original 12, and I'll go over in future of what I plan to do in them. Some of them we're going to do perennials, so I'm not actually going to have to plant in them every year, but just know that we are now expanding the raised bed garden area, which I'm really excited about because it's just so much easier to manage, and I'm really looking forward to that. I would like to have an in-ground garden, and we will have that. It'll just need to be for future when I have a little bit more time on my hands. Now we are back to the front yard, and this is something that when it first started happening and they were just digging the dirt, I was not exactly sure what exactly was happening, and I was questioning whether we had made a right choice in this. But so far now, as I am seeing it come together, I think it's absolutely stunning. So what this is and what they're working on right now is what's called a dry riverbed. Who knew? And this is where we are going to have, it's just going to look like kind of like a creek that's going through this front part of the property where it's going to be a dry riverbed. So they are putting landscape fabric down so that we're not going to get a bunch of weeds in this area, but it's going to be so fun to plant a bunch of perennials and flowers around this area. I'm not going to be able to do that until this coming fall, but now that I can see how this is coming together, I can start to envision and I can start to think about what type of perennial plants I want to put in here. I know I want to put a ton of bulbs and grasses and landscaping that is going to be so fun to watch this come to life. But the cool thing about a dry riverbed is there's no maintenance. If you guys have seen my dad's pond, my dad has a beautiful, beautiful pond with koi fish that are amazing. And it is really cool, but the amount of maintenance that goes along with having a pond or a water feature is more than I can handle. So this is kind of cool. So we're getting kind of the the water feature-esque look without all the extra effort. So they are going to be putting these stones around these big boulders that are strategically placed, and this is going to really help transform this front area, and it's kind of going to make it be kind of a statement piece in the front of the property. They were so methodical about placing each of these rocks in a really nice spot to make it look really put together. The next step after we have the dry riverbed is going to be placing the walkway, but we have to wait until we have a icky day to do that, because the next big thing that they're going to be working on is trenching, and trenching is something that has to be done on a dry day. So here is kind of what it's looking like now. The dry riverbed is in, so then we're going to put the walkway in, and then we get to do the fun part, which is starting to landscape. And I'm really happy with how this turned out. Okay, so now we are in the back, and you can see these white lines. These are kind of the start and rough estimate of where, well, it's supposed to be the final estimate, but since we were changing things around and trying to figure out how much space we need between each bed, it's a rough estimate. So these beds are, if you can see the white boxes, that is a 16 by 4 foot bed, which is the same size as we had on the previous homestead. And then this space between the two beds, currently as it is spray painted, it is 8 feet in order to get our side by side between every single bed and every single row. And right now what we're trying to figure out is, do we need 8 feet between every single row and every single bed? Or is that something that we can kind of shorten? So here is from one side of the garden to the other side of the garden. These last 2 rows from here down, that was where the in-ground garden was going to be, but now we are going to turn that into a raised bed garden. So you can see the overall kind of arch, the before, and then what we did is we had Josh go get the side by side, and he's going to start driving, and we're going to mock drive around the beds just to see if we can make it fit. And we wanted to measure the side by side and see how well we were going to be able to have it access the beds. We bought this so that gardening was going to be a lot easier for me, and so we want to make sure it fits between the beds. That's super important. And the side by side is 5 feet wide. So what we were trying to figure out is if we need 8 feet in between every single box, so we could drive around and make corners. We've decided to nix that idea. We're going to have 10 feet here so we can easily drive and access these boxes from this road. We're going to have 6 feet here so we won't be able to drive. Then we're going to put 8 feet here so we can have a main access road all the way down these boxes. And then I'll have 10 feet on this side. So we'll be able to access each one of these boxes using the side by side, but just not from each individual row, just from here, here, and here. And then we've decided to move the greenhouse from up here, which would be right here. And we're gonna bring the greenhouse way, and we're gonna stick it right down there. Having the paint on the ground definitely makes these boxes feel a lot smaller because we're in such a bigger area that it's hard to, the scale is just a lot different than it was in the last house. But I think this is gonna be really, really awesome. We're going to, I'm kind of nixing the in-ground garden for now, and we're going to have 20 16 by 4 foot raised beds. A couple of those are going to have perennials in them, so I'm not actually going to be planting and cultivating every single year in those beds. So we'll have probably an asparagus bed, a rhubarb bed, and so those aren't going to be ones that I'm going to need to be actively planting every year. We'll plant them once and we'll keep them that way. But here I can show you first one starting right here, and then there'll be a walkway here, another bed here, another walkway, another bed going all the way 5 that way and 4 this way. It seems like a huge step to see the spray paint on the ground. Originally there was 8 feet between every single row and every single box, so that's what it looks like right now on the ground. So our landscaper is going to go through and respray paint and make sure that between some of them there's 6 feet and some of them there's 8 feet, so that they can start trenching and doing the irrigation. That's the big thing that's happening today, is trenching so that they can start putting the irrigation to each box. And so they need to know where each box is going to be in order to know where to put the trench lines. Now, Josh and the landscaper are marking out where the irrigation is going to go. That's all way above my head. And so they've got flags that they're flagging out. And we are going to scrape up all of the previous lines so that the permanent lines can be placed. And so we don't have any confusion on what goes where. And now that there are a bunch of beds back there currently as I record this, the beds are bigger than they seem when they're just white spray paint in a big field.
So one of the reasons I want to shorten the distance between the beds if possible is you can see how this is a little bit more level here, and they're going to work on making it a little bit more level. But as we go this way, the slope significantly, it's hard to see, but you can see how it slopes a lot more on this side. So to have it level between the beds, if we push the garden way farther that way, then it's going to be harder to have it level between the beds, which is something I want for ease of gardening. So that's one reason why I've shortened between some of the beds 6 feet, so that we're gaining a few feet and we can push the garden back kind of this way. And along this more sloped area this way, coming around this hill, is where I eventually want to put fruit trees and blueberry bushes and things like that, where I can plant them once and they can just live there. And if they're on a major slope, it's not as cumbersome to work around than if I'm trying to weed a garden bed or plant carrots or harvest lettuce and things. So that's the goal. So down here where it starts to slope, we are going to go ahead and put our perennial fruit. And then eventually, I mean, who knows, we could put stuff down this hill too, but kind of that's what I'm thinking. So the first goal here is just to kind of map out where the garden beds are going to be that we will plant our annual peppers and tomatoes and all those sorts of fun things. So right now what Josh is working on is they are trying to map out where they want to put hose bibs, and we're trying to plan for the future and make sure we have enough. While they're trenching, we might as well trench more. And the greenhouse is going to be tucked right in here, and I definitely want water in the greenhouse so we can start seedlings and do all the fun things in there. And then I want to have a bunch of pots with flowers and all the things, so we need to make sure we have water to them. That's one thing I learned a lot from last year, that if I have to hand water, I don't have time to hand water everything, and so some things tend to suffer a little bit.
Now we are going to start talking about where the chickens' new home is going to be, because I've decided to move where they are going to be.
So it's hard to see right here, but there is a ridge up here, and I want to put the chicken coop up here so that they can be kind of out of the way, but we can still see them. I can see them on this ridge from our house. I love my chickens. I want to be able to enjoy them. So having them here is somewhere we're going to be able to enjoy them. Originally, we were thinking of putting them way back there, but one that's really far away from the garden, and I feed my chickens a lot of the produce that maybe went moldy, or tomatoes that split, or the weeds, the bugs from the garden. And so I want them closer to the garden, and this is pretty close, but it's also out of the way enough that it's going to be out of the way of kids playing, utility vehicles, and we are going to trench a water line so that they can have water. I've been having, what I have now is where I have an automatic waterer for them, and to not have to worry about watering them every single day or every couple days is really nice. So while they're trenching for water lines, they're going to go ahead and trench a water line for the chickens as well. And this is where it comes up here. So the chicken coop will be somewhere up here, and then it'll all be fenced in, and I'm going to fence down into the woods a little bit so they'll be able to have this whole ridge area into the woods, which is something you will enjoy, right? Yes. I do not like having the chicken coop this close to my house because they're messy and kind of yucky. The girls have started laying again, so I'm going to open this box and see if we have any eggs today. Oh, we got one egg.
They are making fast work with this trencher. So this is the trench line. We're making sure that it is deep enough that it will be underneath the frost line, so we don't have to worry about freezing pipes or anything like that. So this trench is going to go all the way from the well house, because we are on a well here, and it is going to be for not only the garden, but we are also going to irrigate our backyard where we're going to have the grass. I've talked about having an area for things, barbecues, and people to have fun. The rest of the property is not going to be irrigated, so we're not going to water the field grass or anything like that. But we do want to, while we're putting in irrigation for the garden where we're going to be growing food, we also want to be able to water our lawn in the backyard area so that there'll be a place for kids to play and yard games and fun things like that. So this is the trencher. Last time we had a trencher on our property, Josh and I were trenching and putting in the irrigation for our last house. So it's kind of fun to see this piece of equipment. And this white line, they're going to trench all the way along this white line. And you can see one white line goes to the right, and that is the one that's going to be the main line for watering the backyard. And then the one that goes down the hill, that one right there, that's going to be for the lawn. And then the one that goes down the hill, that is the one that's going to go down for the garden. And we are planning for expansion if we ever want to expand the garden, putting in a orchard or blueberries or a vineyard. We'll be able to tap into that, and Josh and I can do that down the road. Now you can see here that ridge where the guys are standing, that is where I was earlier, and that is where we're going to be putting the chicken coop. So you can kind of see from a different perspective of where the chickens are going to be, so we can see them from the house.
Now that they are trenching and working on the front, I'm going to go ahead and start painting. I need to get all up here done, and hopefully we can just crank this out. I do have a dinner I'm going to. It is 11:30 right now. I am going to be leaving here. Well, I'm not probably going to. Well, we'll see how far we get done. Some of my family is still in town, and my mom invited us over for dinner tonight. So we are going to go have dinner over there. So I'll let you know how far we get today. Hopefully I can finish this in the next few hours that I have.
Now, I had alluded to the fact that the reason I'm nixing the in-ground garden is because of time, and that is because in my very little experience when it comes to gardening, because I'm going into my 4th season gardening, I have found for personally, my in-ground beds were a lot harder to manage when it comes to weeds and to water, because that's just my experience. So because I have such limited time, I'm the one that manages my garden. I wanted easy. And for me, that meant to invest more into raised beds. Now, that doesn't mean that in the future I don't want to have an in-ground garden. I would love to learn more about it and to expand that ability to grow in the ground and learn how to build soil. I just don't have the time it takes to manage that personally right now. Because now I live farther out, chip drop is not something that I realistically can rely on. Chip drop, you probably, if you were in my gardens last year and you saw all those wood chips between the beds, the big pile of wood chips, I could get chip drop throughout the year as many times as I wanted. I would stop at requesting chips because I just could get so many, because I was in town and they were just readily available. Now that I live so much farther out, chip drop is not something that I can rely on, so I can't rely on getting a massive amount of mulch to help combat the weeds. And if I was to purchase mulch, it would just be very, very expensive. So I just figured, you know what, at this time of my life, I'm just going to invest in raised beds, and we're going to go that route because I have a lot more experience and I know how to handle them a lot better. It's a lot more controlled environment. And there's so much in gardening that is very difficult to control, if anything at all, that if I can try to create an environment that I'm going to be as the potential to be successful, that's the way I'm going to go right now. Which is how we got to the point where we decided to build 20 raised beds. I am so excited about that, yet I am a little overwhelmed and scared with the idea as well, if I'm going to be completely honest. I have decided, as a way to help reduce the amount of overwhelm feeling that I'm having when it comes to these 20 raised beds, is I am going to try to plant out quite a few of them as perennials beds, which means that you plant the plant one time and the mother plant comes back year after year after year, so you don't have to plant it out every time. And a couple examples of that are asparagus is a vegetable that's a perennial, rhubarb is a perennial, and then I think I might have a perennial, maybe dahlia bed, and a perennial herb bed. Where I live, a lot of herbs will perennialize where you don't have to plant them every year because it doesn't get so cold. So things like rosemary, sage, thyme, oregano, those are all perennials in my area. Versus an annual is a plant that the mother plant grows from a seed. It produces fruit that has seed in it, and the mother plant dies in the winter, and then that seed will grow out another mother plant. So every year you have to plant new seed. And when you think of a vegetable garden, most of the vegetables that you think of are all annuals, which take a lot of effort. And so a way to kind of try to reduce the amount of effort that I have with these 20 beds is to try to put some perennials in there. I'm probably eventually going to also transplant some of the strawberries. Strawberries are perennials as well, from the previous owner's garden area into my garden area, because eventually we're going to rework where the previous owner had their garden on this property, and I don't want to lose those strawberry plants because those are some pretty incredible strawberry plants. We got so many strawberries out of those beds. You can probably hear the baby. He's hanging out with me here, and he's wanting to talk to you as well. And so I'm thinking that I'm going to transplant a bunch of those strawberries into the new garden.
We did it. Well, kind of. We got one coat cut in everywhere. Now I have 30 minutes. I'm gonna see if I can roll and get this whole area rolled and have one coat on the entire, you can see I need to roll there before I need to go.
Painting is one of those things that I always think I can get more done than realistically is possible, because I do try to be detail oriented when I do it. So it takes time to paint. And on this day, I was convinced I was going to get this project done. Well, no, I didn't get this project done, but I got most of it done. I got enough of it done to where I didn't really have to take an entire day again to paint. It was just, an hour here or there where I had time between, feeding the baby and naps and stuff, where I could pull out a paintbrush and cut in. So as of now, officially, I am done painting, except for the areas that I haven't started yet. So I'm grateful for that. I am just going to button up now and try to clean up my mess. My goal on this day was to try to come home to a put back together house. I was not in the mood to come home to paint supplies all over, and I had a few minutes, so I took the time to take the tape off, which is probably one of the most satisfying things when it comes to painting, is to be able to remove the tape and see that nice new clean line. I also take a second to kind of tidy up my desk, because my desk had become a catch-all, which as of right now, it is a catch-all again. It's just one of those things, you clean it just in time for it to get messy again. I have put away all of the paint supplies so that I can just live in peace. I do need to paint more, but I'm probably not going to get to those projects, honestly, until after the growing season. It'll probably be next winter. So instead of just living with the painting stuff out, even though I know I'll need to get them out again, I am going to go ahead and take the time to put them away so that we can just live in a clean and organized environment.
We did it, friends. We did it. Pushed through. I texted my family and said, I'm going to be a little bit later. I was planning to be there at 2, but we'll be there probably around 3:30, which is totally fine. There's no need to be there right on time. I thought it was worth going ahead and pushing through and finishing this painting project so I don't have to get everything else out. I don't have to get everything out again. There's some touch up I need to do. We touched a couple of the ceiling, not in here, but in the other room. So there's going to be a little bit more painting I need to do, but overall, we got it done. I do need to finish taking care of a couple of these items. I'm not going to totally throw that roller away because it depends on, I don't know, we'll see how it goes if I start painting the hall and our bedroom. I'm thinking not, but I don't want to throw that roller away until I know for sure. I want to show you what they're doing outside. They've made some huge progress. They are already trenched into the backyard. It is incredible. So they normally only work till 4 o'clock, and so I don't think they're gonna get to trench. No, inside please. No thank you. No thank you. So they I don't think they're gonna get to trenching to the actual garden today, but we'll see how far it goes. Thank you for taking time out of your day to spend time with me as we finish the painting project and we updated the garden. That's a big step, seeing where those garden beds are going to go. That is, well, I need to start thinking about seed starting. I've ordered all my seeds. I need to build a grow room. This last week was mostly focusing on family that's in town and things, but today's the last day that I'm gonna be able to spend time with them, so I'm gonna go enjoy that. But coming this next week, our gears need to shift onto thinking about actually planting things in this garden that hopefully this spring will be ready for me. So thank you for spending time with me today. I can't wait to see you next time. If you enjoyed this video, I can pop a couple of my other videos here. You can go enjoy between now and my next upload.